Welcome to Everything About Web. My name is Jamie Cavanaugh, and this is the One Column CSS Layout Part 3 tutorial. So in Part 1, we organized our files and we created our HTML and our CSS file, and we attached the CSS to the HTML. In Part 2, we added the content to our HTML page. So you can see in the design view where we left off. So we have our navigation added to our header, we have our photo, we have our text that's added to our main text div in our content, and we also have our copyright information. So if we look and see where we are. This is where we are, which doesn't really look like our final page yet, right? If we look in our Photoshop document, this is what it will look like eventually. We need to add our CSS. So this is actually where the fun part begins. We're going to style our page using CSS. So let's talk about what we need to do. We need to add the logo to our header. We need to style our navigation. We need to position our photo, and the same thing with our text. And then there's going to be some other smaller things that we're going to want to do in order to create our final presentation for this page. So let's start by creating or inserting, I should say, the logo into our header. So we're going to use a window called CSS Styles, and if I select that, we're going to get this really fantastic tab here called CSS Styles, and you're going to see that if we twirl down this little caret, we'll see all of our divs and all of the CSS that we've added to our page. And this is going to make it really easy for us to edit our CSS. So what I want to do is I want to add an image to the header div. So I'm going to select the header div and use this little pencil tool to edit my rule. And it's going to open up this box for me. And in here I'm going to suggest, or I'm going to pick a category. And the category that I want here is called background. And this is going to allow me to insert a background image to my page. So you can see the second field right here says background image. I'm going to browse for that image again in my images folder. Going to select the Smithsonian logo PNG file. I'm going to choose that and say OK. Awesome. So let's preview that in Firefox. Look at that. Fantastic. We can't see our navigation now, but we have our logo. So far so good. So let's talk about the next thing that we're going to do. Next thing is that we're going to style our navigation. And we can't see it right now because it's black, so we have to change that. But there's actually several things we have to do. And in order to style our navigation, we're going to add some CSS, and we're going to add it's basically, at least Dreamweaver calls a compound selector. We're going to style the unordered list, because that's what our navigation is. It's an unordered list for the navigation div. Okay, so let me show you how you can do that. We go up to Format, CSS Styles, and select New. If you click on this drop down, you'll notice that one of the options is this compound selector type. So I'm going to select that, and it's going to allow me to be really specific about what I am affecting. And what I want to affect is my unordered list in my navigation div. So in this selector name, I'm going to enter #nav for my div and then UL for my unordered list, because I want to add styling to that unordered list in my nav div. I want to make sure that it's being defined in my styles.css, which it is. I'm going to say OK. And now I can add style to my list, my unordered list. So I'm going to pick a font family, and I've used Georgia for this. So I'm going to select Georgia, and notice that Dreamweaver puts in some other options so that if a user doesn't have Georgia, the browser will look for Times New Roman. If the user doesn't have Times New Roman, they'll look for Times. If they don't have that, they'll just pick a serif font. So that's standard practices, and Dreamweaver does that for us. My navigation, the font size is 16 pixels, and I would know that by looking in my Photoshop document. And I've got some line height. Basically, that's the leading, so that I've let out some of the space between my lines of navigation. And I'm also going to define a color. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You can use this color picker. These are what are considered web safe colors, or you could go to this color wheel and select a color. I actually know the hexadecimal for my color, and again, it's from my Photoshop file, so I'm going to add that in, and the hexadecimal is DEE1E4. Okay, so that has you can notice up here that now I've got the color, I've got my font, and my leading, but there's actually a couple other things I want to do. So let me go back to it. I don't know how that got checked. I unchecked that. I'm going to also add a little bit of positioning, because notice that right now it's way over to the top and the left, and I want to actually position it so that it's 45 pixels from the top and 55 pixels from the left. And again, I know that that's where it's positioned because I would look at the Photoshop document and look at the rulers and check out what my positioning is. So I need to add some padding. So I'm going to uncheck the same for all and add some padding. So on the top, I'm going to add 45 pixels, and on the left, I'm going to add 55 pixels. Okay. And awesome, I can see that it has positioned, but I've got these bullets, and the reason I have the bullets is that by default an unordered list will display as bullets, but I can change that. So I'm going to again go back to my definition, and notice that there's a category called list, and under list style type, the very last selection is none, and that's going to remove my bullets. So I'm going to select list style type none and say OK, and look at that. Now my bullets are gone. So my styling, it looks so much better. But these are not actual links yet. And I need to create links, because they would be navigation. So you would click on them and they would go to another page. So I'm going to add the links by highlighting them, and I'm going to use my properties inspector for this. So this is another really helpful window. I'm just going to bring this up here so you can see it. So I have my educator's text highlighted, and notice that there is a field for link. So this navigation would link to a page that's called educators. So I'm going to type in educators.html. We're not going to build that page, but ultimately this site would link to this other page. So when the user goes to educators in the navigation and they click on it, it would open up a page, and we're going to call it educators.html. Now look what happens. Ooh, we lose our styling, right? Now it's blue and it's underlined. Eee. So we got to change that. Now that just happens by default, so no worries. But let's go in here and add our other links. So the families navigation would link to families.html. Students would link to students.html. Okay. Okay, but now our styling has has totally changed on us, and we want to change it so that it is back to our original sort of lightish gray color, and we don't have an underline. So what we need to do here is change basically the A link color. Okay, by default, any links will change to this blue, but we have complete control over that using CSS. So we're going to go back to defining a compound selector by going to Format, CSS Styles, New, select Compound, and we're going to define it for what's considered the A. Okay, that is basically the link pseudo element. So I'm just going to pull this down. This hopefully isn't confusing, but notice that, in fact, I'm going to delete this for a second. If I pull this down, notice that we've got some what are called pseudo elements down here. Link, visited, hover, active. These are the states for whenever anything has a hyperlink. And we're going to actually work with two of these. We're going to work with the A link, so that we're going to change what the link color is, and we're also going to change the hover, so we can specify exactly what color we want that hover to be. So let's go back here, and we're going to, for our nav div, our unordered list, we're going to define the A link element. Okay, so it's just written as A for our unordered list. We'll make sure it's in our style.css. We're going to go here and do two things. We're going to get rid of that underline. So under text decoration, we're going to say none. And then we want our text, when it's linked, to be the same color as it is before. So that was that gray color. So it's DEE1E4. Say OK. And yay, now we don't have our underline and we don't have that blue. We now have that sort of lightish gray color. But we also want to add a hover state, and a hover state is when a user hovers over your navigation, it changes color. So this indicates to the user that there is a link, right? That's a standard convention, that when we get that rollover color, we know that that is linking to another page or to something else. So we're going to create the hover for this, and again, we're going to use good old CSS, right? So let's go back up to Format, CSS Styles, New, and again we're going to go to Compound, and I'm going to erase all this. We're going to affect our nav, our unordered list, and instead of just A, it's actually the hover. So we're going to put in A:hover. So we're affecting the hover for the unordered list that's in the nav div. Okay. And I'm going to say OK. And here's where I can select my basically my rollover color. And one way you might want to do it, I did this originally, is, maybe I want it to be a color that's in my image. Notice how I can use my eyedropper and just be able to select my color that way. So maybe I want it to be, let's say, a dark color like that. Okay. So, and I could also, just hand code, or sorry, put in a hexadecimal number here in this color field, either way. So from my Photoshop document, I might have defined a color already. I'm going to put in the color that I've written down here. Okay, so 9B591B. So either way, you can use your eyedropper, or you may have specified it in your Photoshop document. So that will give me my rollover color. So let's check it and see where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and preview this in Firefox. I'm going to save this. And now look at that. We've got our hover. So that's fantastic. Now it's obvious to the user that this is navigation. So far so good. Let's move down to our photo and our main text. So what do we need to do to the photo? The photo we need to center, and then it's also has a little bit of space, right, between the header and where it is laid out. So this is about 50 pixels, so we're going to add a little bit of padding to it also. So let's go to our photo div and edit it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the category called box. And we know that the width of our photo is 500 pixels, so we're going to add that. And what we're going to do to center it is we're going to define margins for our div. And so I'm going to uncheck this same for all, because I just want to set the right margin to auto and left margin to auto. And what that's going to do is it's going to sort of automatically just center it in my page. So I'm going to set my width, my margin left and right to auto, and I'm going to say, oh, I need to add padding too. Let's do that right now. So padding, I need to add that 50 pixels to the top. So I'm going to do that. Right? And now I can say OK. And look at that. It's fantastic. Let me go over to the design view. We'll see that now my image is centered, and it's laid out so it's 50 pixels below the header. So I'm making some really great progress. I need to style what is down below this text. So let's do that. I'm going to toggle back over to split. And what I'm going to do here is I'm basically going to do the same thing for my main text div. I'm going to add my auto margins and add the width to it. So I'm going to select it, click on my little edit rule pencil, go to my box category. I want it also to be 500 pixels wide so it lines up with my photo. And I want to add an auto margin on just the left and the right. And let's say OK. Look at that. So it's laid out and placed where I want it to be. Now I want to add some styling to my footer. And what I'm going to do here is notice how in my HTML, my text it doesn't have any kind of markup on it. It will be so much easier for me to work with this if I have my text marked up into some sort of tag. And it would make sense to have this as a paragraph. I'm going to be able to affect it by specifying styling for my paragraph that's in my footer div. Okay, so we're going to see how that works in just a second, but I just wanted to make sure I added that paragraph tag around my footer text. So what I need to do here is I need to add, if we look at the Photoshop document, there's a border, there's a horizontal rule between my content and my footer. So I'm going to add a border, and it's so easy to add a border to a page using CSS. So I'm going to select my footer div. I'm going to edit it, and I am going to go to the category called border, and I'm going to uncheck these because I'm going to just add a border onto the top of my div, and that will appear as, it will look like just a horizontal rule between my content div and my footer div. So I'm going to specify that it is a solid border. It's going to be 1 pixel. And the color, again, I know this from my Photoshop file, is going to be F3. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. It's going to be pound BAB 8B 8. Okay. And I'm going to say OK. And now I have a horizontal rule, which is really just a border on the top of my footer div. So look at that. We can see that. Let me just move this up a little bit. So you can see here I have my horizontal rule. Now I need to style and position my text right here, my Smithsonian copyright information. So let's go ahead and maybe do that right now. So the way I'm going to do that is again with that compound selector type that we've been using a lot. And I can specify the paragraph in my footer div. So I'm going to go back up to Format, CSS Styles, and select New, Compound, and I want to back to my footer, my paragraph. So the paragraph in my footer, I'm going to add some styling to it. I'm going to say OK here. And some of the things I'm going to change or add, I'm going to, this is Arial, so I'm going to specify the font family as Arial. The font size is 11 pixels. And my color is B2, B0, B0. Okay, and again, I know that from my Photoshop document. And I want to do a couple other things. Notice that the text is aligned all the way to the right, or to the right I should say, because there's a little bit of padding on the right also, and there's a little padding on the top. So I'm going to be able to position that correctly by doing a couple things. One is I'm going to go to the category called block, and notice that one of the options here is text align, and I'm going to choose right. And if I just go ahead and hit that apply, we're going to see that my text has gone all the way to the right. Can't see it right now, but it has. And then I'm going to do some padding. So I can go to my box category. I'm going to uncheck the same for all. And I'm going to add 20 pixels to the top so it looks more centered in my footer. And then it's not all the way to the right. There's actually 50 pixels between the edge, the right edge, and my copyright information. So I've got 20 pixels from the top and 50 pixels from the right. And I'm going to say OK. So let's go ahead and preview this. And look at that. So my copyright is in the correct place. I've got a little styling issue here with my heading and my paragraph that's in my content div. So let's go ahead and take care of that. And as you probably guessed, we're going to use that compound again. So I'm going to go up to Format, CSS Styles, New, Compound. And now what am I trying to affect? I'm trying to define styling for my main text div for the H1 tag. Okay, so pound main text H1. It's being defined in my style.css. And what I want to define is my font, and it is Arial. The size of my font is 26, so it's relatively large because it's for a heading. My color is a dark gray. It's this pound 333. I'm going to select that. And then I want to add a little bit of padding. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding to the bottom and a little padding to the top so that my heading isn't, my paragraph and my heading aren't so close together. So I'm going to go over to my box category, uncheck my same for all, and add 5 pixels to the bottom, and I'm going to add 10 pixels to the top. And when I say OK, we'll notice that it has affected the design, right? So we've got our heading now that is the correct color, size, font, and has padding. So I'm going to go back and basically to do the same thing for the paragraph. So go back up to Format, CSS Styles, New, Compound, and again it's main text. This time it's the paragraph. It's in my style.css. Say OK, and again I can define my properties, my font family, my font size. For my main text it's 11 pixels, a color, and let's say the color in this case is black. And oops, I actually did this wrong. This is not 11, it's 14. And I have some line heights. I've added a little leading to it of 20 pixels. And I'm going to also do a little bit of padding, very similar to my H1 tag. So I'm going to go over to Box and add, I'm going to add 5 pixels to the top, and I'm going to add 20 pixels to the bottom. Again, to add just a little bit of space here. And I'm going to say OK, and look at that. Now my paragraph has also been styled. Fantastic. Look at that. Wow, what a change from where we started at the beginning of this part 3 and where we're at now. One other thing that I want to do is this white content area is just sort of fading into the color of the browser, and the background of the browser window by default is white. But I can change the color by modifying the properties for my body tag. So I'm going to go do that. So I can select this body tag and edit it. And under background, notice there is this very first one is where you can define your background color. And again, I've written this down. I've selected this color earlier. It's a hexadecimal CBC6 BD. Okay, and I can say OK. And now when I preview it, fantastic. I think that looks much better. Now we can see the definition of where the content actually is. There's a nice contrast between the footer and this background also. Let's view our source code. So I'm going to go to View, Paste page source, and this is what we have created. This is our HTML that we created in Dreamweaver. Look at how great that is. Very clean. And our CSS, right? So fantastic. We go back to our Dreamweaver. Let me just toggle over to code. So that is our final HTML. So let me just have you take a look at that if you want to refer to it. So that's the final HTML for this page. And then the final CSS is right here. Okay. And let me just scroll up to the top. So here is the CSS for our body, our wrapper, our header, for our navigation, for our content, for our footer, our main text, and our photo. So there you have it. So we've moved from a Photoshop document to creating a one-column structure. As I mentioned in part 1, we did the file organization and set up the HTML and the CSS and linked the CSS to the HTML. In part 2, we talked about adding the content to the HTML page. And then finally, in part 3, we talked about adding presentations. So we were working pretty much exclusively in CSS to create the final presentation, the final styling for this page. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And as always, I thank you so much for watching Everything About Web. Please visit us at www.everythingaboutweb.com and on YouTube and Twitter.